who could comment wisely from his own experience on what happened last week in Baton Rouge, Minnesota, and Dallas. And that president did that today at a memorial service in Dallas for the 5 police officers who were murdered there on Thursday night by a mentally disturbed Army veteran who was seeking revenge for black people who have been killed by police. Before President Obama spoke today, we got a short glimpse of what previous presidents could offer in these situations from former President George W. Bush.
Most of us imagine if the moment called for that we would risk our lives to protect a spouse or a child. Those wearing the uniform assume that risk for the safety of strangers. They and their families share the unspoken knowledge that each new day can bring new dangers.
President Bush's 7-minute speech was a good speech that said nothing that anyone could disagree with. It was filled with properly placed sympathy for the police officers and their families. It contained multiple references to God, and he spoke directly and movingly to the wives and children of the 5 officers who were killed.
Your loved one time with you was too short. They did not get a chance to properly say goodbye. But they went where duty called. They defended us, even to the end. They finished well. We will not forget what they did for us.
President Bush, in the short time that he had to speak, did not mention the reason those police officers were working that night. He did not mention the protesters who those police officers were protecting. He did not mention the killings by police of Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge and Philando Castile in Minnesota that inspired those protesters to take to the streets that night. He didn't use the phrase Black Lives Matter. It is possible, if President Bush were still in office and had more time to speak today, that he would have mentioned some of those things, but it is also possible that he wouldn't have, because prior to the Obama presidency, all presidential speeches in moments of national mourning took no chances. No president ever wanted to raise the possibility of any kind of disagreement over anything he said at such an event. No president was willing to take that risk. And every previous president spoke from the perspective of a white man in America. Most of those presidents were elected before women had the right to vote, and it is hard to find speeches from those presidents that even hinted at a concern for the experience of women in America, or black people. The best our first 43 presidents could do was empathize with black people, and most of them didn't bother to do that. When President Obama leaves office, we will not see a presidential speech like we saw today for a very, very long time. It began with a spontaneous joke. President Obama was introduced by Dallas Police Chief David Brown, who quoted Stevie Wonder lyrics in his comments.
Chief Brown, I'm so glad I met Michelle first, because she loves Stevie Wonder.
The president began by talking about each of the officers killed: Lauren Aarons, Michael Kroll, Michael Smith, Patrick Samarripa, and Brent Thompson. He included touching details about each one of them. And he did not shy away from the reason they were working Thursday night.
Like police officers across the country, these men and their families shared a commitment to something larger than themselves. They weren't looking for their names to be up in lights. They'd tell you the pay was decent, but wouldn't make you rich. They could have told you about the stress and long shifts. And they probably agree with Chief Brown when he said that cops don't expect to hear the words thank you very often, especially from those who need them the most. No, the reward comes in knowing that our entire way of life in America depends on the rule of law.